Hello, this is screenwriter, novelist, and Walter Hill devotee, C. Courtney Joyner.
And this is fellow Walter Hill devotee Henry Park. Also, I'm the Western film editor for True West magazine, and I'm a screenwriter.
And we're here to talk about Extreme Prejudice, which, Henry, as we know, had an extremely long period of writing and development, and even a rather complicated shooting history to arrive at the movie that was finally released by Carolco in 1987.
That's right, 1987. So that was 11 years after this film was first announced.
That's right. And John Milius, his original screenplay, which bears so many similarities to other projects that he was involved with, including Apocalypse Now, as far as the formation of this commando unit, and even these opening scenes. In one of John's drafts of Apocalypse Now, he has a group of Marines taking on anti war protesters in an airport, and they are bound together and they beat up the protesters, and then they stick together and admit to nothing to no one. And here we have a special forces unit that is coming together for a very secret reason that we don't yet understand. But in Milius's script, as we know, Henry, this sequence that we are seeing here just in the airport, introducing all these characters, and we've already seen Michael Ironside and Bill Forsyth, here's Larry Scott, uh, is almost 15 pages long.
That's right, it's 15 pages long with narration about who each person is, and it's all taking place during a military award ceremony, and it's real involved. Whereas this, boy, does this cut to the chase a lot more.
And it is also, as we'll go through and discuss the different writers involved with this project, uh, it's certainly even the writing style, Milius's writing style at the time that he first drafted Extreme Prejudice runs completely counter to Walter Hill's writing style. The script is very dense, and even going, this is the old school way, even has camera angles and things like that, which of course all of that has been jettisoned. And there is great Clancy Brown, who's one of my favorite Frankenstein monsters, by the way, who was a wonderful creature in The Bride.
Right.
Matt Mulhern.
They're having fun with the the variety of heights there.
Yes.
Yes, this is a very nice sequence, just bringing all the characters together from so many flights and so many areas, and boom,
There's Mike
wonderful
Ironside.
Ironside.
Yes.
What a sinister presence he always is.
Especially when he's wearing dark glasses. And one of the things with Ironside I've just always think of and love is his work in Canadian films, particularly with Cronenberg. And Scanners remains just
Oh yeah,
I
I always think first of Scanners when I think of Ironsides.
absolutely, it's just exploded into our memories, literally. And
But of course, being a Canadian actor, I mean, he's very fine and talented, and would have done well anyway, I'm sure. But it certainly helped when he would be like there'd be an American film shooting in Canada, and they need a certain percentage of Canadian cast. He was one of the great go-to guys because he's just such a intense, fine character actor.
absolutely. And in fact, we should note that the title of this film, Extreme Prejudice, goes back again to Apocalypse Now.
Mm-hmm.
And when Colonel Willard, which is a name that was in the original Milius draft of this script, is given his assignment, it is to terminate Colonel Kurtz with extreme prejudice.
Right.
So this is, something the military, if you will, standing of these characters and the way Milius wanted this story to go was something that I think is truly the architect of this structure. And in fact, it does remain.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh,
one of the things just about, to me, the whole Extreme Prejudice, terminate with Extreme Prejudice, just where it came from. I understand the first time it was publicly used in a non-military circle was in 1969 in the New York Times, where it was used in a couple of articles about the Vietnam War. And terminating without prejudice, I learned, means fire an agent or operative but allow possible future employment. Terminate with prejudice means the op was considered unsuitable for future employment. And terminate with extreme prejudice was never really an official phrase, but it was sort of a flip way of referring to somebody who needs to be killed.
And in this case, um, it it's interesting that it kind of has double meanings because there's so many people in so many gun sites
Hmm.
throughout this movie. We're not quite sure who is, you know, needs to exercise extreme prejudice against who, but we're introduced here to our Rangers, Rip Torn and Nick Nolte, immediately, which goes against really the structure of the Milius script. And John Milius was to direct this movie for quite a long time, and it took substantial shifting from studio to studio. And finally, when the opportunity, of course, he was rewriting, but when the opportunity came to make this film as a director, he opted instead to make Big Wednesday. So the script now was out there. Ted Kotcheff was involved with it. Jonathan Demme was involved with it. And then finally, when Walter Hill came along, the now where the for example, Derek Washburn was brought in. Now he had written, of course, he'd won the Academy Award for writing The Deer Hunter, but also had written The Border, which
Right.
hit so many of the same grace notes as this particular film, and is wonderful. Warren Oates' performance in that movie, and Nicholson is very good. I've always felt that film was undervalued, but I could see exactly why they would ask him to get involved with this film. And when Walter Hill came along and got involved, the first person he asked to work on it with him was Larry Gross, and of course, because they were doing 48 Hours.
Right.
And there's Nick. So, and Nolte, by the way, right before this film, had been in Down and Out in Beverly Hills. So he really went to the gym. He really cleaned himself up and trimmed down. And physically, I think this is the best he ever looked in a movie.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. 48 hours, he looked good, but he looks better here.
Yes, and he really, he wanted to, as he said, to complement the uniform, and he certainly does. But this is a real, let's establish our character right off the bat.
Yes, and establish mood when that
Yes.
guy runs right into the camera and boom, gets that blood popping out of his face.
And there's old Rip. And Rip Torn was in kind of he was working a lot, but he was, sometimes he was in something like Beastmaster.
Hmm.
Other times he was doing a lot of comedies like Canadian Bacon and Beer and
Right.
things like that during this period. And but then also would do some superb work for television in like the Atlanta Child Murders. Uh, he did a wonderful version of Long Hot Summer. And this is all before he kind of had his. I mean, again, he was a constant. City Heat with Eastwood and Burt Reynolds and different projects. He never stopped, but then became, if you will, this cult figure because of his brilliant, brilliant work on the Larry Sanders Show, which of course was sometime in the future
Right.
when he was doing this movie.
But what a fine actor, and whether he was playing leads in really solid films or strange little supporting roles in things that were really so beneath him, he just brought so much. What a terrific
And he
actor.
is a native Texan, so this is where he felt he was right at home. And we're coming up to an interesting moment here that Nick is arriving home and he is definitely questioning himself and what he's up to in his job.
Look how wonderfully empty that looks. That is a cop's home that where his life is his job.
Yes, and
Oh, but there's something else there.
yes, there
Yes.
is. Now, from this moment, uh, Nolte looks in his bedroom. He sees his lady, and he is now going to move into the bathroom. And for me, this is an absolute 100% direct reference to Bullitt, because this is the end of Bullitt. And of course, Harry Kleiner, who has the final writing position on this movie, wrote the shooting script of Bullitt, and Walter Hill was the second assistant director. And Kleiner also worked with Walter on Red Heat. And I think a lot of the, if you will, classic tropes, and you and I have
Mhm.
discussed, uh, that exist in this film with the love triangle and Maria Conchita Alonso, and almost the film noir elements come from Kleiner. He was the veteran screenwriter on this film, career going back to the 40s. Wonderful film noir like Fallen Angel and Where the Sidewalk Ends. And of course, he also wrote a Sam Fuller movie. He wrote House of Bamboo.
Right.
And of course, my personal favorite, Fantastic Voyage,
Mm-hmm.
beyond Bullet. But Kleiner was the real deal. And I think it's wonderful that Hill, what Walter Hill said impressed him about Kleiner, and it points to the production of this movie, was that during the making of Bullet, Kleiner had to write ahead of the camera a lot of the time. And he had that skill, which is an immeasurable one. And so when they were making this movie, Walter Hill knew I'm going to have somebody I can trust who's good to, as we make it, uh, be there to,
Do the next scene
do
based
the
on
next
what we did
scene and pull
today.
up the slack. You
Yeah.
bet. And he couldn't have found a better choice. And here's Powers Booth with the Scorpions.
What an introduction. Gee, I wonder what kind of a guy Powers Booth is.
And this is uh, so completely different performance and character than he had in Southern Comfort, which was his previous film with Walter.
Right. Which is why it's so smart to set him up as a guy who would pick up and crush a scorpion. That so that we get a hint that no, this is not the Powers Booth that you saw last or have ever seen before.
Right.
Of course, he really established his career overnight playing Jim Jones when because he'd mostly been a theater actor until he got his Emmy for that TV movie.
Well, for the Jim Jones film, of course, too, people got a little upset with him because there was a strike going on, remember? And and SAG would not appear, no SAG members were to appear on television or anything else during the time until the contract was settled. And Powers Booth attended the Emmy Award ceremony and accepted his award.
That's
And
right.
people thought that was a slap in the face to SAG. And it was not. And I thought it showed actually a lot of guts. And of course, the contract was settled, and he honored SAG completely. But he actually got some attention. John Dennis Johnson as the mousy accountant
Yes.
for our good friend Powers Booth. And
It's good to have a weak, corrupt banker when you need one.
yes. Now, this moment here, uh, where it is essentially eliminating some of Powers Booth's competition for the drug market here in this town, is still to me a little unclear.
It's really sort of like something that comes out of a montage. rather than a scene. It's like here we're establishing we're clever and violent, kind of like a 1930s gangster movie where you'd have a series of a bunch of places being shot up and Molotov cocktails being thrown into banks and
Well,
stuff.
this has an odd cut in it, and we'll see it here in a few seconds. And here with our government operatives, of course, are observing everything. They're observing Nick Nolte. We still don't know what they're up to. And obviously, it's something pretty sinister because they're already talking about killing Texas Rangers. But now that we're back to the chicken shack and we see this character coming in, a character we don't know, and this is and there we go. And now, yeah, we cut to Nolte. Um, Again, it does feel like there is material missing between the two scenes,
Hmm. It's
and
very abrupt.
very abrupt. And in fact, as we know, there was a lot of stuff shot for this film that was not used, and it was a long, grueling process. Not only boiling down the John Milius script, but including eliminating a storyline that we will go into, where the footage actually was shot with Andy Robinson as one of the feds. So I think that at times the abruptness. Now there, I think it's very noticeable. Other times, yeah, I don't believe it is noticeable at all.
Right.
Uh, Now this moment, this is let's have our great mano a mano between our baddie and our hero.
And of course, the good guy wears black and the bad guy wears white.
Yep. And but I think the if you will the classic tropes of the western are so much here, and it's true throughout the whole movie. There is Tom Tiny Lister wearing a 93 on his shirt, and he was quite an interesting guy. I wrote two movies actually that he was in, and I remember during a rehearsal period, I was sitting next to him. We were actually on the floor because there weren't enough chairs, and Tom leaned his head back and hit the back of his head against the corner of a desk that had one of those glass tops on it,
Ooh.
and there was blood. And I went, "Oh my God, are you okay, man?" He reached behind and just looked at the blood and said, "Yeah, I'm okay." He didn't even feel it. It was like a bowling ball
Wow.
for a skull. It was remarkable. But he was a nice guy and was very good. And in fact, that movie that was the film, if anybody remembers, Prison, directed by Rennie Harlan. And before we left for Wyoming to make the movie, Rennie and I went to the movies, and this was the film that we saw.
Oh, cool.
And not even knowing that Tom Lister was going to be in our film.
That's great. Now, do you think this is shot around El Paso, where the story is set, or is this Southern California? Because I know they shot in both locales. I don't have a
I
sense of
think
that.
a lot of this material and throughout, and of course, the inner city, the city stuff around the banks and all of that. I think it was all El Paso, uh, and of course, Walter's own experiences of shooting in Texas, and we see definite echoes of it.
Hmm.
Comes from writing The Getaway for Peckinpah
Right.
and being on set, and that's and I think that movie also, of course, influenced this film, but so of course does the Wild Bunch and a number of other things. When frequently actors Powers Booth and Michael Ironside, William Forsythe, all referred to this as Walter Hill's tribute to Sam Peckinpah. So, and I think it's absolutely there.
Oh, yes.
Bill Forsythe made some real declarations about that in a very good interview where he says, and I quote, "Extreme Prejudice is the last of the Mohicans. I don't think we'll ever see a film made like that again. It's Walter Hill's homage to Sam Peckinpah, and it's just a gathering of some really amazing actors, heavyweights. Just to make a piece like that, something that just had this feeling of something long gone by. And I think a lot of what Forsyth is referring to is the fact that uh, this was a commitment from top Hollywood people to make this style of an action movie. It's not Fast and Furious. It's not, if you will, something. And certainly, this is long before CGI invaded everybody's
Oh
life.
yes.
But this in itself is a throwback,
Yes, it's a real physical uh, man against man action picture.
which began to really kind of fizzle out.
Oh yeah, it did.
Uh,
And I think you're absolutely right about it being, in homage to Peckinpah. Walter Hill has said to me that the people that he really credits for his career as a director was Sam Peckinpah and the kindness of Charles Bronson. Because he said that, well, actually, I can give you the quote. He says, "I'll be eternally grateful to Charles E. Bronson, his agreeing to do the movie, which was Hard Times. I think in the end, there were two things that really kind of got me there. One was I wrote The Getaway, which Peckinpah directed and was a big hit. That got me the chance to direct. And when I did Hard Times, Charlie did the piece, which certainly helped make the movie a success. Then I was unleashed."
well, that was a thing that Charlie's support was so important to Hill. Oh, and there's Lynn Shay, long before her horror rebirth, which he has enjoyed now. And she is a wonderful lady and just such a great character actress. But I think it's interesting to note with Hill that in these days, in these studio days, the support of a movie star made a hell of a lot of difference.
Yes.
That's who knows where that is anymore because everything is kind of so shrouded and foggy and there are no clear-cut lines. But in those days, if you had someone like Charles Bronson supporting you, you got your opportunity. And there, we should note, is dialogue that absolutely you would never hear in a movie made these days. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it absolutely would not happen. Now, here in the as the story unfolds, and we begin to see a little bit more of what in the world our government operatives are up to. And we know now that, of course, we know these guys are compatriots because we saw them at the airport. But now that
When they
they're,
did their scene together, that reminded one a bit of 48 Hours.
yes, absolutely. And of course, with Walter, too, the ups and the downs were extreme. That there could be a massive hit like The Warriors, it would be a massive hit like 48 Hours. And then in between, a movie like that I personally love, but did not do well, like Streets of Fire.
Right.
And that was always kind of Hill's pattern. As you know, Walter's very frank about it, that there would be some things that would just hit and others that would not. And for Carolco, who Andy Vanya, Mario Casar financed this film, he did three: Red Heat, this, and Johnny Handsome. And unfortunately, although now all three movies have very substantial and legitimate cult followings
Oh,
for
yes.
their qualities, at the time of their release, they were not world shakers.
His films always seem so personal that I think it's sometimes just a question of what is personal and important to him in a given situation. If the rest of us respond to it, or I should say, if the public responds to it, then it's a hit. If not, it doesn't do much business.
Well, Walter's also always been a stylist.
Yes.
And some people are completely comfortable with the style, others are not. And here, showing this history of Cash Bailey, as you said, the difference here in the script that Milius wrote and Derek Washburn and Larry Gross and Harry Kleiner and all these other wonderful screenwriters who distilled it down, that in fact, the Cash Bailey character does not even appear in the script for the first 35 pages.
That's right. And other characters that are major in the final film don't appear at all in the screenplay.
And we should also note in Milius's script that the government operative characters do not have names. They only are identified by the jobs that they do, such as
Right.
light weapons, uh,
Heavy weapons, demolition.
demolition, absolutely, and information gathering and what have you. So it certainly opened up the idea of the casting, but it made everything a little more impersonal, which is probably very much his point.
Hmm.
That this is just a commando unit. This is like a machine that
Right.
has been dropped into Texas
To do a job.
to do a job. And part of the history behind what Milius originally wrote was the idea of the German plan to invade the United States through Mexico. This came up in World War One and World War Two, and of course never happened. But it was to Milius, he's like, well, there you go. There is an open doorway right there for a foreign power. And maybe we need to bring some military folks in to take over a stronghold like a fortress,
Hmm.
and that would be our best line of defense. And and also in the Milius draft, uh, some of the CIA operatives, the government operatives, parachute in a sequence that's very reminiscent of Red Dawn.
Yes. You know, one of the interesting things, as long as we're talking about all the writers involved, co-credited with this story is Fred Rexer, which I find very interesting because, well, he has so few credits and only this one for writing. But and all his credits were with John Milius on films. He was a Army Vietnam combat veteran and military advisor in Apocalypse Now, spiritual advisor on Conan the Barbarian, and technical advisor on Red Dawn.
So he was part of John's inner circle.
Right. And a military expert, clearly.
Yes. Now, going against the grain with Bullet, we see here this conflict. I don't want to talk about it. He gets upset. If we remember in Bullet, when Jackie Bissett presses Steve McQueen, he has one line of dialogue. It's not for you, baby. And that's it. And Nick wanted to go for something a little more histrionic. But it's one of the few bursts of emotion actually we see the character have in this movie. And I I wonder now, looking at it so frequently as we prepared for this, Nolte's being so stoic and so lacking in humor or shown humor here, you wonder, yeah, why is she with him?
Yeah, it's frankly a little unclear the appeal. It's certainly not personal warmth.
No, it is not. And as you and I had discussed, to see Extreme Prejudice, and then we jump forward to Fire in the Hole.
Hmm.
And I think that there was, of course, the dynamics are traditional dynamics and westerns and film noir and things like that. So we're not looking at anybody appropriate anything. However, I don't think we can escape the comparison with this with Justified.
Absolutely.
Uh, there, because there you have a ranger. Of course, he's in Kentucky, Raylan Givens,
Hmm.
and a girl between him and Boyd Crowder, who is a drug lord. And they used to dig coal together. And in this case, it's Jack and Cash, and they were good buddies. So
In a
there's,
way, you could take that back the farther to Angels with Dirty Faces.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it is a classic kind of a gangster and cop or gangster and priest.
What? Yeah, one goes one
Oh,
way and the other goes the other, and
right.
that's right. And of course, Harold Robbins wrote "Stone for Danny Fisher," and that was the basis. That was the story right there that then became King Creole with Elvis. But it's something that just always has worked. And I
You had mentioned the fact that there isn't a great deal of humor in this film, and I think that is notable, especially for this kind of very masculine action picture. It is a little unusual that the chuckles you get were in the airport when people were coming in and horsing around.
but particularly it's interesting after 48 hours,
Hmm.
which is just so skillfully has the humor and the action and
The
it just
drama,
absolutely it's just wonderful. And Nolte absolutely can find that comedy rhythm. And again, what he had done right before this, Down and Out in Beverly Hills. So
right?
he was a very comfortable guy approaching it from that standpoint. But he did spend time with Texas Rangers, and this is how he wanted to find the core of this character. Now, this scene is shot almost to me verbatim of the way John Milius described it in his very
Hmm.
original draft.
Yeah, as you say, there are shot descriptions in this, and yeah, you can see it shot for shot.
And this is quite a wonderful shootout, and the amount of choreography here is really impressive because there's a great deal going on, and we're
And
absolutely, on the front lines here. And as with the Milia script, the government operatives are watching this at a distance because this is the test for the Nick Nolte character. They want to know who they're going up against and is this guy a real badass or not? And of course, he is.
is yes, he is. They should have seen the earlier part of the film.
Yes,
They could have saved all that ammo.
exactly. And but this is a beautifully done scene. But it is interesting that it is from that very first John Milius draft. It
Mhm.
is absolutely it's like every comma and period
Oh yes, they preserved it
is
exactly as
preserved.
written. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the perfect word for it too. And here we go, and things
And
right
boom.
there.
And one
Boom.
thing's start, as you say, the choreography is beautiful. You never look at a moment and say, wait, who was that? Or where did that shot go? When you look at how so much of action is shot today, where they do a lot of shaky camera and a lot of purposely too close to quite get what's going on, just, I guess, to give them more options on cutting it.
Well, here, of course, with Clancy Brown watching, the great Mickey Jones, watching with the binoculars. This also echoes the Wild Bunch
Hmm.
because we have the scene where they're seeing Emilio Fernandez's gang, the Federales, uh, in their shootout, seen at a distance.
Right.
And even some moments from the very beginning in the town shootout. Uh, Bo Hopkins, they're blowing this town all to hell. And so and it allows us, if you will, that distance to actually see kind of the layout of where everybody is in relation to everybody else.
Right.
So it's also a very good directorial choice. There's Mickey Jones, a very, very nice guy who was the drummer for Kenny Rogers in the first edition. And
Whoa.
here
I
is,
love that, just that window going
which
in
I'm
was
sure was a
imposing.
mistake. Now,
Right.
Tommy Rosales, also an extremely nice fellow. I had him in a movie playing a guy who robs a liquor store, and he
And
was shooting a shotgun, and a tremendous stunt performer and a good actor and a very, very nice guy.
as
And
you say, a stunt performer and an actor, and that is so valuable when you get guys that can really do the action as well as act, and so you don't have to suddenly go to a long shot because you can't
exactly,
use them.
exactly. And Tommy's one of the old pros and still very much around.
That had to
And
hurt.
and as Walter said himself, that there's really no way to shoot scenes like this where the audience has not seen this 100 times before. And he said that it's not just the choreography, but are they invested in the characters? Well, here, of course, you've seen Rip Torn, who we like,
Right.
bite the dust. Uh, that's a beautiful image. And we've seen Nolte taking everybody on and winning. And so that is the impact of the scene. It's not just more bullet hits and cars squealing around corners and things like that, although there's plenty of that stuff. It is very much, what the characters are doing and how they're doing it.
And this is such a fun sequence when
Yes,
the escaping bad guys come up against the agents.
the worst guys
Yes,
who are
that's it.
supposed to be the good guys.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what they are still. And we just know that they're up to something. And you have two actors with incredibly resonant voices.
Mm-hmm.
And Clancy Brown, of course, uh, has done so much work in animation,
Oh my gosh,
and
yes.
including SpongeBob SquarePants.
That's right.
Yes, many, many times. And every Marvel animated show and every DC animated show, he has contributed his vocal talents. And
And it's so interesting going back to the Milia script that in that scene, when the truck pulls up and the bad guys get out, they cut away.
yes,
And you don't even you don't know for sure what happened until later, of course.
yes.
I think that keeping the action, putting the action in there rather, was a good choice.
Well, again, with Walter is so skilled as an editor and paring things down and trying to really make the scenes work and shave it as close as possible. That's one of his tremendous skills. And with this particular movie, uh, for anyone who's never held any of the drafts of the script in their hands, it is a beast. The Amelia script is what, 146 pages?
148.
148. Yeah. It is a real hefty load. And so Hill and Derek Washburn and, of course, Harry Kleiner had to find the core to each scene, retaining what John Milius had done,
Mm-hmm.
retaining this fantastic concept of what happens if a group of government operatives, you know, run headlong into a Texas Ranger who they underestimate.
Right.
And you've got this situation where do you find that those scenes and the best scenes and the best way to present them? And I think Walter did a tremendous job of that, because that is not easy. And of course, this film there was had a very long schedule, and one of the subplots that was cut, and here we see the partner in crime is this material with Michael Ironside. He has a partner played by Andrew Robinson of Dirty Harry and Star Trek and Hellraiser, fame, and of course Andy is just one of the great people, and he was on this film uh, for many weeks, and all of his scenes were with Ironside, and it was a whole nother level to the conspiracy,
Hmm.
and he was another government agent, and he'll just decide. In fact, he told Mike Ironside, you know what, we've just got to cut all the Andy Robinson material, and they had shot on that for weeks.
Gosh, it's got to be a huge disappointment. But and I'm pretty sure Ironside makes a reference to his partner.
He does.
But not having seen the footage, you don't miss it.
No.
I think it was a good cut and one that had to be made. It's funny when you talk about how long the script is, 148 pages. If you presented a producer with a 148-page script today, how much would they say you have to cut?
50.
They really don't like over 100 now.
No. Also, this element of having Maria Conchita Alonso work in a nightclub, to me, also is a great throwbacks. This is like Dark Angel,
Oh, it's all the film
or
noir stuff. Yeah,
absolutely Ida Lupino and Private Hell 36 and The Man I Love and films like that. And that's Harry Kleiner.
right.
That's the classic thing.
Having it be a mariachi singer is different, but
Yes,
it's a matter of degrees.
absolutely. I think Ironside is particularly great in these scenes because he kind of puts on his nerd suit.
Oh yes, it's nebbish time. Put on the
Yes,
glasses that you can
absolutely.
see through, not the dark ones, and
Yep.
the little tie and shirt.
And he is just sucking Nolte in. And Nick isn't, is unaware, but as everyone is, but Ironside's plan is unfolding very, very well. And this scene is so well shot. I think just the movie itself, a beautiful job by Matt Leonetti. And it's interesting because he kind of became a bit of a comedy specialist, kind of modern day things like, of course, he did a beautiful job on Fast Times at Ridgemont High,
Yes.
and then with Walter, Red Heat, and Johnny Handsome. This, and after this, another 48 Hours. But one of my favorite jobs he ever did, because again, it's different, and it's so glossy and so, gosh, just has that wonderful almost Douglas Sirk look to it, is the photography job he did on Jagged Edge.
Oh yes. Lovely. And well, he adapted so beautifully to whatever was called upon for, and a beautiful sense of the tone he needs. I,
Oh,
I just love the atmosphere in here, where he's got enough smoke to make it make sense, but never obscures what you need to see.
oh, where yeah, it looks like it's a night in London, where you can't pea super and you can't see anyone. But that's the mark of one of the great old style directors of photography, because they take what the, if you will, off the page, and
Hmm.
they study the script and then get with the director. And of course, Walter and Matt had to have a wonderful simpatico, and they came up with a great color palette for this film, particularly when we get back into the parched desert,
Oh,
and matching the scenes that were shot in California with the scenes that were shot in Texas.
right. You never have any sense that there are those two locales.
No, and the moments here with her again. I wish we don't know how hard this is punching Nick Nolte in the heart, but it definitely is. And old Forsyth, of course, is the most offensive of the group, and in that sense reminds me of the Dirty Dozen. He's the maggot. He's the Telly Savalas
Yeah.
of
The
this crew.
grates on everybody. Yeah.
Yes, and but we're still being held back information.
Oh, yes.
We know they're interested in a bank. We know that this is, somehow the government is actually doing something, but we're just unclear as to what is the motivation here. What in the world are these guys actually about? Which really, I think, is the, if you will, the key to the Milius script, and what he was always interested in was ghost operations.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought that to the fore many times. And this is one of the few films, considering all the action movies and wonderful films that Walter Hill has made, this is one of the very few films that even has a hint of espionage to it.
That's a very interesting point. Yes.
Because even something like Red Heat, where you'd think there would be Russian spies all over the place, nope, it's just Arnold after his fugitive.
That's right. It's very direct.
Yes. And this moment, Walter, of course, was a very good friend of John Flynn's, the director. And this scene and the way this is shot, actually, it reminds me of something from John's wonderful movie, Rolling Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
And going up, and we don't know what Cash is up to. And
Love the laundry hanging out there.
yes,
That's such a nice touch.
and the colors. And he's going in, and we have no idea who he is going to see. Now, this moment, uh, again, we just find these because filmmakers go back to their favorite themes, they go back to their favorite visuals, and and here we go. This is the getaway.
That's right.
A- and this is there's yes,
An endearing moment.
yes,
Yes.
indeed. And if you want rats, I can tell you where you can find rats. And actually, this is the scene for whatever where I think Bill Forsyth's voice modulates the best. For
Mm-hmm.
some reason, they finally really struck the right chord. And
And
of
it's
course, there's Mr. Scott, very well remembered in Revenge of the Nerds.
right.
And quite a
Jamal.
different, yes, quite a different performance
Quite.
than, than here. Of course, Powers Booth died much too young,
Oh, yes.
but also was very much a part of Deadwood, and Walter Hill directed the pilot.
Indeed, he did. Um,
And of course, Tombstone.
right. I was thinking the two roles that I always think of him in is as Curly Bill Brocius and from Tombstone and his Cy Tolliver in Deadwood.
And yeah, he was wonderful. And
This is such a cute touch.
that's great. And here's our little bit of, yes, comedy relief from the dim-witted deputy.
Mr. Ernest.
Yes. And what are we looking for here? And again, this goes straight back to Milius, and Derek Washburn and everybody else who was rewriting the script was not going to change anything that John had written about ammunition or tracking down ammunition or markings on shell casings or anything like that, because that is definitely Milius territory.
That's right. You don't want to make the mistake of fixing that.
No, absolutely not. And I'll tell you why I particularly like this scene, because it is the one scene in the movie where we see the Nolte character actually doing police work.
Yes, not just going around and pushing people around or shooting, but doing the nuts and bolts kind of work.
Yep. And I think it's very good. And here we have, of course, Michael Ironside has his own thing going on. We can imagine that right before he walks into the office, there was a scene with him and Andy Robinson
Hmm.
saying, "Okay, what are we going to feed this Texas Ranger to throw him off the track?" And so he does.
And he's trying so hard to be helpful.
Yes, exactly. But of course, we do not know. And there it is. He's a nice fellow. And here with these planning scenes of what is going to happen with the planned robbery and all the rest of it. Again, this goes straight to the getaway. And in fact, in another parallel to Justified, in the pilot to Justified, they make reference to that. That what we're any bank robber who goes ahead and sets off explosive charges or whatever to deflect attention away from
Hmm.
the robbery and get the cops occupied, that is directly referenced in the pilot. And in fact, Oliphant's name is line rather is I saw that in a Steve McQueen movie. So the impact of the influence is consistent
Yes.
and
Cannot be denied.
cannot be denied. And here is we go with kind of a similar situation, but of course in the Peckinpah film, it is multiple explosions around town, and kind of trying to get and they've laid out where all the police are at different times and all of that. And this is
All of that planning
yes,
makes it all seem smart.
yes. And here with the hydrogen truck, of course, we get ready to do a wonderful kaboom. And but also one of the differences being that here where they set off all of these diversions and these explosions versus the getaway where everything is in town.
That's right. They keep it local there.
Yeah,
Here it's all spread out.
spread out. Probably also because it is bigger. It's uh, let's get the hell out of there because here we go.
Yes.
And we're seeing some really, really fine work by Freeman Davies, who is Walter's longtime film editor. And the integration of shots and all of this action back and forth and keeping track of all of these characters, that is very difficult to do. And I think it's beautifully handled here.
Positively. And as you say, it is, when it's done well, you don't see it.
No, it's invisible, as it should be,
Right.
because you know you don't want to interrupt the narrative flow.
Yeah. If you're seeing a movie and you're thinking, wow, this is great cutting, you're not really into the
You're not
movie.
into the movie exactly. And
The second or third time you're watching it, that's great. But yeah, when you want to see how you can do it yourself.
well, Walter, just like whether it was John Ford or Raoul Walsh or Sam Peckinpah, uh, it really doesn't matter. But great directors tend, Clint Eastwood, tend to gather around them a team.
Yes.
And Freeman Davies, just like Mae Woods and Matt Leonetti and others were part of Walter Hill's team. And everyone really stepped up for this movie.
It's true. It's funny. People always talk about great directors and their stock company of actors, and that's absolutely true. And it's something that you can just with the eye pick out. You're watching your John Ford movies and say, "Oh, there's Wallace Ford again." But it's really what makes so much of these things work is the behind the scenes people and the people that know what the director wants. It's intuitive.
Oh, and now I think Eastwood is probably the greatest example of that,
Yes.
going back decades with some of his people, and you're right because that is as you say, that is something that is so important. And this film had some, they had some budget issues and they had some uh, scheduling issues, and you needed the right people to be on hand to handle it. Now, I think this is a great touch because this is so perfect, because sometimes that's what happens. You're pulling off a crime or whatever, and the most mundane thing completely upends the entire plan.
Right.
And this is, and again, going to the getaway, but here they are armored car guys and not just walking in their long coats with their shotguns. But Matt Mulhern and Bill Forsythe are having a real problem here trying to get out of the sand, and their not being there is going to end up being a real problem. Here we go. And this,
Just the movement in this is
yes,
lovely.
it's great. And here we're now thinking, okay, so these government operatives are actually after Powers Booth.
Right.
So, yes, they are going to rip off this bank, but what they're doing is they're stealing Powers Booth's money.
Right. And whatever else he has
Whatever
in
else,
there.
exactly.
Right.
But that's the thing. This is the way to break him. And that seems to be very much the mission and what everybody is about.
And all the stealing of the money is just cover.
Yes, it is. And because what they really want are right there are the record books from John Dennis Johnson and the man who knows where all the cash is. And now
They're still trying to get out of that
still
trench.
trying to, their Texas license plate, they're still trying to get out of here. And Forsythe had done also around this time Out for Justice, the Steven Seagal movie with John Flynn. He's a real, just out of control maniac in that movie. But one of his early on performances that I was just fascinated by was as Cockeye in Once Upon a Time in America.
Oh.
He was so sinister
Mm-hmm.
and just like, oh my gosh, who is that guy? He really stood out. And then years later, just wonderful as the butcher in Boardwalk Empire.
Yes.
He was great. Oh, John Dennis Johnson, great fellow, and could always play these kind of bespectacled. He's either playing a motorcycle hood or somebody wore incredibly thick lenses and was
Almost a Jerry Lewis.
Yes,
his
exactly.
glasses. Lady.
Yep, as he was doing his accounting for the mob or whatever he was doing. And there we go. Yes, this is early morning call on Extreme Prejudice. That could definitely as Walter is quoted is that at times, as he said, the creative tension was high, and that seemed to be between Mr. Nolte and Mr. Booth.
Yes.
And but this is such a well executed scene, and the beauty of this type of filmmaking that we're seeing here is you actually understand not only the geographical position of everybody within the sequence, which is very difficult, especially considering how many people there are, but it is all clear and it is clean. And these are skills that kind of seem to have gone by the wayside a little bit.
It's true. It's people's. Well, I think a lot of it may just come down to shooting schedules that people don't really have the chance sometimes to get all the shots they want, and they go cheap and fast with a lot of shaky camera
Yes.
and a lot of running, and figure, well,
Panning from this one to that one and back and forth. Yes.
and you can get the general information across, but when you have a thing with this many characters, and to understand what is truly going on, you need to know who is where, and what bullet went where, and what missed,
Right.
and those things you lose. This is so clean.
And now Nick is giving chase. And all right, so this is just it's a short sequence, but it's a very nice one. And anyone who really wants to see the ABCs, again, Walter being schooled on the making of Bullet, but the ABCs of how to shoot a car chase, you would go a long way to find anything better than the work he did in The Driver.
Yes.
And once again, you have to really know your film language to make scenes like this work.
I always tell people that I know that are starting out making films to watch these kind of things with the sound off.
Yes.
And that's where you pick up where the cuts are and why they happen where they do.
And same old same. And now things really start to unravel as Nick does a
That's
little investigating.
right, as Nick does his job.
Yes. And this moment, again, in the Milius script, as we said, that the pace and the way it's laid out and everything else, quite a bit different, is very far and deep into that draft.
Right. This is way late in it.
Yes, it is. And we kind of violate a little basic rule here, but it works to heighten the tension where we know more than Nick Nolte knows.
Yes.
And so we're not discovering it as he does. We saw this in the very first frames of the movie.
Well, but that is the basis of suspense, is when audience knows more or different things than the characters.
That's
so
right.
they have the, oh my God, don't open that door, because we know what's behind it.
That's it. And now we're going to, suddenly everything's going to start coming apart. I love this. He just kind of shouts it across the room. Oh, the FBI wants this. The FBI wants that. And you tell him to kiss my ass. And there, yes, sir.
Tell us what you really think.
I really like Matt Mulhern in this performance. He was a good actor, and he is, if you will, kind of the everyman of the commando squad. He's not, crazy like Bill Forsyth, and he doesn't have all these idiosyncrasies. He's just
Regular guy.
Regular guy. Yeah, exactly. And it's a real nice contrast. And also here, Forsyth, I think, in these particular scenes where he takes it down a few notches, as if all of the cigar chomping and everything else was also kind of part of the blind. And I think that's an interesting thought.
Right, that it's an act.
It is an act,
And
yes.
that these guys, when you see them now, they're so much more calm because they're not at an airport and there's not an audience they're performing for. They're just really trying to deal with their jobs now.
And here, of course, Larry Scott lays it out as to what in the world are we doing? Why are we doing this? And he is actually asking finally the questions that the audience itself would like answered. And Clancy Brown's response is, "We do not have the right to know those answers."
That's right. That he's a soldier and he's doing this kind of work. You do what you're told and you don't ask why. Among
And
other things, because the good thing about not knowing is you can't tell anyone. You can't be forced to give up something you don't have.
that's right. And and here, of course, too, somewhere along the line, that the name was changed to the Zombie Squad from originally in the Millions draft was it Operation Columbus?
That's right. That is quite a switch, isn't
That
it?
is quite a switch. And the fact that they are all listed as dead, so that if they get captured or killed or whatever, there's absolutely no way to trace their involvement with crime or with the U.S. military. Again, the Ghost Patrol, and now we discover, okay, now Nick knows they got in that fight on purpose to find things out about him,
Right.
and of course Forsyth is having none of it, and neither is Matt Mulhern. They are sticking to their directives, and you see so much again. I think of echoes of Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
As I think of the wonderful scene on the boat when they're going upriver, and what's that great line? I don't know what you're up to, but one look at you, and I know it's going to be hot. And that's it. It's everybody is just following orders.
And in this sense, of course, that phrase, of course, suggests German army.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, here they are American soldiers, and they, have what has always been a safe assumption that whatever orders they're following, there's good reason behind it. They're
Right.
doing the right thing by following orders.
And in fact, as we discover, maybe there's something else going on, and
That's
not
right.
just that. This little clip reminds me of a movie that Walter would make a few years later that I like quite well, Undisputed.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was one of the last things that Peter Falk ever did
That's right.
with Wesley Snipes. It's a very good movie.
Speaking of movie clips, you remember in the Milia script, I found it was sort of interesting that so much action takes place at a drive-in where they're showing Dirty Harry and Magnum Force.
Yes. And yeah, John's kind of nod to himself.
That's right. A self homage.
Yes. And of course, speaking of Magnum Force, one of the writers, again, Derek Washburn,
Hmm.
here had collaborated with Michael Cimino on the screenplay for Silent Running,
Right.
and with Stephen Bochco also doing a pass on that script. And here is Ironside coming clean. Now, I think here, this sequence, Henry, this really is, it's like boiling everything down
Right.
just completely. That, okay, now you and I should team up. We both want the same thing. We want Powers Booth.
We're on the same side.
We're on the
Let's
same side. So
combine what we know.
God knows how many pages that was originally, and then right bring it right down to its essence, which I would encourage anyone, if they've never read any of Walter Hill's scripts, and you can find them online, to read his screenplay to Hard Times, which is just a remarkable document. And as I said, it really is that incredible haiku style that he really kind of invented with all of that white space. And it's such a fast read, but what words are there are the necessary words that get the feeling and the scenes across.
Just bare bone.
Bare bones. And here, and we keep going back to it, that they were working from an incredibly dense document that seemed to run almost counter to what Walter's style. Now, also, of course, Henry, uh, you and I had done commentary on Geronimo,
Right.
which was another collaboration between Walter and John Milius.
And only actually their second after this. But I've got to think that if they never officially were credited with anything together before, they ran in the same circles. I'm sure they knew
Oh,
each
of
other
course.
for years.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think that kind of goes without saying. And they, uh, but it also, I think at this time, the fact that Mero Kassar and Andy Vanya went ahead and decided to finance this movie, everyone has to remember where Carolco was at this point. They were making huge money, but look at the films that they were making giant money with. They were making giant money with First Blood. They were making giant money with the Rambo sequel. They were making giant money with the Terminator sequels. Now, this did not stop them from going bankrupt, which is a whole nother story unto itself. But this type of movie, if you will, kind of became the house specialty.
Right. And when they did well, they did fabulously well.
It didn't save them, but they did. And sadly, this was a film that didn't do particularly well, but you understand why they got behind it.
Yes,
Because, my gosh, all of these incredible elements put together, of course, spell success.
oh yeah, it looks like a how can you lose?
Absolutely. And now here we're going. Now, Matt Mulhern, of course, is still upset about screwing up on the bank robbery and wanting very much to redeem himself. And so we now have our baddies and our good guy, our semi baddies, or whatever. They're still kind of a mystery, aren't they?
Yes.
Joining forces. And now here we are. And that's interesting that it's a wipe.
Mm-hmm. That's a real traditional.
That's really old school.
It does sort of announce, and now we're moving to
Yes.
something completely different.
And in fact, we are.
We're physically moving.
Because, yes, this town square, etc., was actually built at Valuze Movie Ranch in California. So we are no longer in Texas. And we are certainly not in Mexico.
No. But it is a lovely set, and I've been on there many times because it is used so often on westerns. I know most people have probably seen it in Westworld,
Oh, they use
where
it
it's
in
used
Westworld all the
extensively
time,
there.
yes.
But lots and lots of big and especially small budget westerns have used the square and the church
Oh, the mission all
interior.
the
Oh
time,
yes,
yes.
it's a lovely mission.
And in fact, after this film wrapped, one of the first movies that was shot there to defray some of the cost of building this was directed by our old friend Steve Carver,
Mm-hmm.
Bulletproof, starring Gary Busey and Bill Smith and L.Q. Jones.
Lost one of our own. Got a lot to make up for. Let's do it for Luther.
This moment here, again, we're getting back into even more echoes of the Wild Bunch.
Yes.
Let's do it for Luther.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? Indeed.
You gonna take on all the movies by
And
hell, I'm gonna walk in there. We used to
this is, they've got their plan. And now Ironside is saying, guess what? We're going to have a new plan, and you're going to blow his head off, and then we're going to do our own thing for a great deal of money. And what's interesting here, I think, and again, this is the great, I think, reference to Peckinpah, is that this band of soldiers opt instead for some loyalty.
Yes.
They're like, why are we screwing this guy over? Wait a minute. And they're defying their commander.
Now
And
that they know what the mission really is.
yes,
That's
exactly.
true. But of course it makes sense because they are not a gang. They've been doing illegal things, but they aren't doing it because they're criminals. They're doing it because they're soldiers, and they've believed all along that there is a legitimate reason to do all of this.
Yes, particularly in foreign countries when they, had gone up against some pretty terrible situations, and we're operating on CIA orders and things like that. And I love this celebration is really is terrific. And Nolte just walks through this crowd, just towering over the crowd, and it's really very well done because there are a lot of folks here.
It's a very, very large number of extras. I mean, it's a couple of hundred, I think.
Yes, and the thing is, when all hell breaks loose, it really breaks loose.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, we're getting the overview. I love that. Again, we're never, with Walter, you're never going to be more than 2 steps away from a traditional Western.
Mm-hmm.
And of course,
Having the cattle racing through there.
the
Lovely.
traditional Westerns, of course, whether we were talking about the Long Riders or you're talking about Wild Bill or, yes, or Deadwood or Geronimo.
It is interesting with Deadwood, I think, that he only did the one pilot. That's the only episode he directed. But boy, is his imprint on that entire show.
Well, of course, that's the whole great thing with a pilot with a DGA is you direct the pilot and you get to open up a check for every single episode because you're officially a creator of the show. So that's why some of these guys always want to direct pilots to TV shows. And if they go, they really go.
Yeah, and if they don't, what have you lost? But
Right.
if you
And another traditional Western that Walter did, which I think is a wonderful piece of work, Broken Trail.
yes,
Yeah,
one of the really fine things done for television.
absolutely. For AMC, as a matter of fact.
That's right.
Yeah. Terrific. I think Powers Booth is obviously having such a ball playing this character. And he is. He's reaching for the sky. He's overdoing it. But he's doing it well and so smoothly and everything else you said. And it really is a contrast to his down at the heels leader of his own commando unit in Southern Comfort.
Mm-hmm. Very different.
Very different. And Nolte, of course, again, is different with the shirt buttoned all the way up to his Adam's apple. Powers Booth open all the way, down to the middle of his chest. Just the visual contrast
yes.
between these two. And this is the, we're really kind of lighting a fuse. When are these two going to finally get to it? And are they, in fact, is it their history that they're fighting over? Are they fighting over Maria Conchita Alonso? Henry?
Are they fighting over the truth of what their different jobs are?
Right.
It's very hard to nail it. I guess the answer really is all of the above.
Yeah. Because as we've seen, Cash keeps offering to buy Nolte's
Nolte,
characters off and said that, that's not a problem. You can always afford me, but you can't afford the Texas Rangers
Rangers,
star.
yes.
Yep. One without the other ain't no good. So this is, they're trying to boil down the friendship, but Nolte is he's the unmovable force, and I think that's also something when you see the contrast between these two actors. How look at you see it right there. Look how free Powers Booth is with his body, and how constricted Nolte is.
Yes,
And that was Walter bringing all of this to the performances because he had said consistently that all the shoot 'em ups, all the bullet hits, and all them, we're going to see a lot of them here in just a few moments, don't mean anything if you're not invested in the people.
that's right. Otherwise, it's just noise.
It is, that's right. And that's not what he wanted to do. And because again, thinking about like The Getaway or even a movie like Hard Times, but when he was doing his other movies, that's always been kind of built in,
That's right.
hasn't it? And I know that when he wrote The Macintosh Man, which was to fulfill a commitment to Warner Brothers, and he saw the movie, he thought it was unrecognizable. It's not a very good movie.
Yeah,
But to him, the big problem was, and I actually should retract my previous statement, that's a spy movie.
that's right. It
That
is.
that is a spy movie.
Right.
So there's his his other espionage movie. But he said that what Houston and Paul Newman did, both of whom he liked, uh, just kind of drained it of any identity within the story. It was nothing. It was James Mason giving an order, and then it's just kind of that.
Took all the personal
No, it took all the
elements
personal out of it,
Yeah.
and it was just that by rote kind of action movie
Mechanical,
stuff. Yeah,
right.
very mechanical. And
Which is sad because you just know by the author how personal it is.
yes,
And I always loved the rule that Hitchcock always said that the more likable you make your villain, the more interesting it becomes. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking of Saboteur
oh yes.
and just how stiff Bob Cummings was.
Well, and going on this now, this was not a likable character, but it also goes to this. One of the reasons that, and of course, Andy Robinson was cut out of this. One of the reasons Dirty Harry worked so incredibly well is that Andy, in fact, was a physical match for Eastwood. This was so startling to people because Eastwood gets his butt kicked a couple of times in that movie.
That's right.
And you're like, wait a minute, whoa, wait a sec. I mean, he's not Superman. This guy is a genuinely dangerous guy. And so you've got to have like one or the other, because without that, all your hero is doing is knocking down a straw man.
Right. You have to have a worthy opponent.
Yes.
No right or wrong is only choices. Everybody's got to make their own, goddammit. That's God given. Who the fuck are you or anybody to take that away? I'm just a poor boy that rose up.
And here's
Ain't nobody gonna take away what I got.
from Powers Booth and the early sequence with the brother in the cantina that when Nick Nolte shoots him.
It feels so guilty about it.
Feels guilty about it, but it does come down to that whole thing of how, in fact, did all of this happen, and it happens out of poverty,
Right.
and especially poverty along the border.
Poverty when there is one way to make money,
Yes,
which is what, of course, pushes people into crime in most places.
and I love Tom Lister just grinning
Grinning.
like a Cheshire cat,
Mm-hmm.
and I love this. I liked him, and I really did.
Little echo of Long Goodbye.
Absolutely. Well, Mark Rydell.
Yes.
Yes, that's somebody I love. I don't even like. Yes,
And again, it's about money.
it is about money. Exactly. But the flamboyance of the Cash character is so of course, cutting. It's like glass, the edge of glass against Nolte's character and his performance. Now that I think this what is going on here. Those are very interesting choices that we're kind of seeing these hallways, these rooms pre-chaos.
Mm-hmm. Sort of establishing them as
Yes, they're empty.
here's a nice little place.
We know, okay, now we're getting to know where everybody is. Once again, this beautiful sense of choreography.
Don't worry, Jack. I just need a little more.
Of architecture, yeah.
Yes, and boy, it's because it goes haywire real soon. And here, the scummiest character of the Commandos
Where you going?
uh, decides to be the decent guy,
I like getting things for myself.
and tells Nick Nolte what's up, which I think that's a nice character piece. And here we see Scott with a gun, a completely different side of his character that's sitting there at a keyboard and
Oh,
in
yeah.
a computer monitor. Yeah.
Oh, just how sweaty he is.
Yes.
This is, that was practice. This is for real.
Yep.
Yep. And as you say, this is a great moment where, as you said, the creepiest guy
Yep.
is laying it out.
Tells Nick Nolte what's about to happen, and he's actually going against orders.
Sure, I go to lunch with the governor of this state, go to Mexico City, all them big charity bars.
And
Rest of 'em out. Ain't nobody like those
there's
guys.
Maria Conchita. I think she's wonderful in this scene and in this moment, because after Cash, of course, shoots this guy in the head and is shocking everybody and whatever. I mean, she is now terrified he is going to kill her.
Right.
And of course, he loves her.
But he knows she doesn't love him.
Yeah,
And that's-
especially after that. Yeah.
Right. No,
And-
we haven't really said enough about how good she is in this, because she is the whole woman part of the movie, and she really is a talented actress and does a lovely job.
No, she does, but it's a difficult job
It is.
because she's not, if you will, a femme fatale. She's not, drawing these guys into her spider web or doing anything like that. And
No, it's we have to believe that she is worth both of these guys being so in love with her.
yes,
And as you say, that's not about glamour.
no,
It's about character.
and also too she is the absolute point of conflict,
Hmm.
and she knows it.
And she hates it.
Yes.
And this is interesting. Watch how her expression changes from, "What do you want to?" "Oh, okay."
Yes.
So
Let's
nice
go.
little beat there.
And yes, as a rule, or I should say, in quite a few of Walter's movies, young men taking hookers upstairs, it generally ends in gunfire.
That's very true.
And that's yeah, I don't know that necessarily one act is interrelated with the other, but it certainly has come. This is a really nice moment. Is she will not even put her chin on his shoulder. She is really keeping emotional distance here. And obviously he wants to kiss her, and that ain't going to happen. And yeah, you can see the shield, if you will, that she has up. And she thinks he is absolutely insane. And of course, not only is he, but here in a few moments, he really treats her horribly
Oh, yeah.
in front of everybody.
Once he knows he can't have her, he treats her like garbage.
Yep, absolutely. And let me run to Nick Nolte.
That'll go over well.
Yeah, that doesn't go over too good, especially since Cash still has Jack's gun. And
Copy this boss cash. Murphy's my partner.
Here's yes. Now there's the little bit of the reference to the partners, and who we never see. And
Which is
I
funny
love
because I was just going to say he offers to make the split with him and the partner to say you immediately think, yeah, that's his way of keeping twice as much money.
Yep. And now Clancy Brown knows what's up. I love the way that was done, pulling John Dennis Johnson to him, and you just see his reaction. And then when he falls back, Ironside's holding the bloody knife, and you see the blade.
I'm gonna give you a real good chance, Jack, just because we used to be amigos.
And here is about as old school as you can get when we're going to do the countdown. And it's what in the world that she's going to do. And, you know, Cash wants this to be so traditional, but we're beyond tradition. This is about Coke. It's about, you know, moving drugs across the border. It's about a private army and, you know, wiping out families and cartel violence.
Yeah,
You know, Cash is living in his own dream world, which I think is ultimately his undoing.
yes, because to him it's still this whole world of honor
Yeah,
and stuff. When he's
and
to say it mild slightly, is the deck stacked against Nolte.
right, yeah, he wants it to be, you know, an old
Alexander
episode of
Hamilton.
Gunsmoke. He wants, yeah, Matt Dillon versus, you know, James Arness versus Lee Van Cleave
Look, honey, if you're gonna cry,
or Leo Gordon.
it all up. It lowers the whole tone. I mean, this ain't just dog shit we're doing here.
And this is, I love this is, you know, come on,
Come on,
you're
we're doing
screwing,
high noon here, and you're ruining it.
yeah, you're
Gonna rip your
screwing,
skirt. Yeah.
he's screwing around with tradition. And
This is not what Miss Kitty would do.
and would Miss Kitty, yeah, show a little just so everybody knows what we're fighting about? Now we're all cooking. Here we go. And it's interesting that this scene is kind of, you know, it kind of protracts what's going on and what's going on, but with excellent purpose. And you do kind of wonder, is it also Nolte's moral code not to plug Cash right there?
Right.
Just
Well, yeah, he is. I think he really wants to bring him back to a trial. He does not want to kill him.
yeah,
The tough thing is, you know, I'd be thinking, well, I'm going to be dead no matter what happens, so why not kill him now?
right. And
But that's not how he does things.
no, and he's completely surrounded by all the guns of all the fellas. And here we go.
But just as in the Wild Bunch, they do take their time.
Yes, they do. And we see the interruption of what happens is a remarkable nod to the Wild Bunch before we have our own version of the Battle of Bloody Porch, which is coming up right now. And here it comes.
That's right.
That is absolutely from the opening.
Yep.
And
And then they look, grab the guns and start.
And start. Yep. There is so much going on here. It's so much just brilliant choreography. And
It just flows
it does.
beautifully from shot to shot.
And I think this sequence actually has its own identity. It isn't just an imitation of what Peckinpah did.
No.
For one of the reasons is, of course, slow motion is sparing.
That's right. And so much of what goes on here is indoors.
Yes.
And I think that gives it just a different look.
And there's also if you will, more interaction within the characters, like that scene we just had.
Right. There's time for talk, even if it's
Yes,
very quick.
even as everybody is kind of okay moving through this hacienda and taking care of as much business as they could take care of because they don't know who is the enemy anymore.
Right. It's
Is it the private drug army? Is it their own commander? Is it yeah.
I mean, that is the curious thing here is that, in a way, some plot elements are really never completely brought together. There really are two separate things going on here. There's the drug war against Nolte, and there's what all the commandos are doing, and they more or less happen to be in the same place.
Right. Well, and of course, with all the machine gun work and the Mexican soldiers and all the rest of it, over and over again, whether it was Clancy Brown or Michael Ironside or Bill Forsyth, I think in this particular scene, and even Powers Booth said the same thing, that to them it was just this glorious tribute to Sam Peckinpah.
Right.
It's how they felt about it and why they got excited about it, because no one had done that. We have to remember too, Henry. I mean, the collective we, I guess, right. Is that when this movie came out, the idea of doing anything that was an homage or looking at, say, someone like Sam Peckinpah's career or whatever, that was kind of a rare thing. Nobody really cared. It was, that was then.
Right.
Hollywood had moved on, and and this is all pre Quentin Tarantino and
right.
all of that stuff. So referencing other filmmakers and trying to capture the spirit of another filmmaker or honor him in any way, that was not usual unless it was say Brian De Palma. But in this case is very deliberate and also unlike almost anybody else who does an homage to another filmmaker, they do not have a direct connection to that filmmaker. And Walter had a direct connection to Sam Peckinpah.
Yes, he was not just a fanboy by any means.
Absolutely not.
And of course, this came after a time when, after the Peckinpah years and the Wild Bunch and so on, violence had been cut down so much. In television, you could watch all the different long-running Western series disappear in the early 70s because they weren't allowed to show any violence to speak of. Everyone that got shot had to get up.
Right.
Because of the fear that, after various political assassinations starting in 68, that watching this was going to make kids into killers.
Well, this also, when this was made in 87, the thing is, too, you're looking at the rise of Joel Silver movies, Lethal Weapon and Die Hard and all that type of stuff. Sylvester Stallone and Schwarzenegger and those guys were the movie heroes.
Right.
And they're following up by, Jean-Claude Van Damme and people like that. And, of course, you had all the Cannon pictures and whatever. But they all were kind of a certain stripe. And anything with this sort of certainly a rural background rather than an urban background was almost unheard of by this point.
Right. Chuck Norris did a little, but he was about it.
That he was about it, including, of course, one Steve directed, Lone Wolf McQuade. But so Extreme Prejudice kind of, stood on its own in an interesting way, certainly going to, if you will, the background of Texas and what have you, which had also become the background for horror, thanks to movies like The Hitcher and things like that,
Right.
and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Any sequel, any version. But this is, this really was a going down a different pathway that was a little. It was traditional and unusual at the same time.
Right. Because it was at a time when people were not paying any attention to tradition.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I've always loved the final shot here. We get Nick and Maria do get to ride off into the sunset.
Or at least walk off into it.
Yes,
Yes.
walk off towards the mission. And this final little moment is so terrific. And to know that, in fact, this is in Santa Clarita, California. This
That's
is not
right.
down across the border. I think that's
Yeah.
terrific. And also a nod to a beautiful Jerry Goldsmith score.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that. It's a wonderful score.
And well, as we said, everybody just kind of came together on this movie. It was made out of, how can we say it, jagged pieces that Walter Hill shaved down and made his own, and did such a, if you will, just sterling and top flight professional job. I think when I look at this movie, even with its production problems and things, and it cost a lot of money, it still was a great example, I think, of real old pros getting together and making a movie.
Absolutely. Both real old pros on screen and behind the cameras.
Yes, and so that's and it makes a difference, and but I'm glad that this is going to suddenly get a little bit of a, rebirth, because it certainly deserves it.
Yes, and it was, I think, sadly overlooked to a great degree when it first came out. And boy, it has stood the test of time. It just gets better.
Yes, it does, and we should mention that here we are around Christmas 2021, and Walter Hill has just finished a brand new Western,
That's right, Dead for a Dollar.
Dead for a Dollar, with Christoph Waltz and a wonderful cast. And so to know that things are continuing is just a wonderful, wonderful thing, because movies like this are, they are rare. And one of the things, too, of course, we've talked so much about Walter as we're wrapping this up. Let us not forget that he is the producer of Alien and all of its sequels. So,
That's right.
yes, so his contribution has been the cinema zeitgeist has been tremendous, whether it's The Warriors or 48 Hours or Hard Times or Trespass.
Whether it's very realistic or futuristic or fantastic, he's contributed, as you say, so much to so many genres and made them all one.
Yes. And he's also a nice guy.
Yes, he is.
So there we go. Well, Henry, thank you so much for hanging with me through Extreme Prejudice.
It's been a pleasure, Court. Thank you.